Easy Explain Cartesianism, Discourse on the Method, parts 5 and 6. So here in this last part, we're going to put part 5 and 6 of the discourse together because they're both smaller parts, and especially in relation to parts 2, 3, and 4. I think it just works nicely as a kind of summary and a wrap up to his project of the discourse here. So starting with part 5, just going to call this the objections. It's essentially what Descartes starts to address here. Yes, he's remembered for a lot of very original, unique thoughts, but also he's pretty infamous for his circular reasoning and some pretty big assumptions he makes that definitely put some holes in his arguments. And he was aware of one almost immediately. That's kind of what the point of part 5 is. He foresaw objections to his claim that the mind and the body are two distinct entities, right? So he starts asking the question ahead of time that he's foreseeing of people being, how is this possible? How can the immaterial thinking thing and the material non-thinking thing be what we are? How does that make any sense? And essentially his reply is only God knows. He leans on his argument for the essential and necessary existence of God to fill those holes in this argument about the body and mind distinction. So I just want to draw your attention to the last large paragraph of part 5, where he puts some big premises in, some big thoughts that he's going to try to support his argument with. So the first is, the mind is not derived from matter, but must be specially created by God. So boom, right there, right? The mind is not of matter, it comes from God. Kind of can't argue that, at least not at first. Second one is, the mind is closely conjoined and united with the body. How is that done? By God. That's something we can't understand or fully appreciate because it can only be done by God. Then once we have this unity is what allows humans to have feelings and appetites. And this is what makes us separate from all the other life forms, especially all the other animals on Earth, is that because of this mind-body unity, we have feelings and we have appetites. So they are from God as well. Next is that the nature of the mind is entirely independent from that of the body. The mind is not the body. They are separate. They're totally different natures. From that, Descartes is also saying that the mind does not die like the body dies. It's just a totally different thing. And he can't even imagine at this point any cause that could destroy the mind. So at this point he says, you know what, let's just conclude the mind is immortal. It's actually totally separate from your body. Your body may die, but your mind will not. So some big conclusions here at the end of part 5 that he's trying to use to support his arguments that he's already established. But then we're going to go into part 6. And I've called this part the reasons. And this is just tying back to what he said at the beginning of the whole project. This is what he said in the very beginning about what part 6 was going to be. Quote, the things he believes necessary in order to make further progress in the investigation of nature that he has made, and the reasons which made him write this discourse. So essentially here at the very end, he's trying to justify this project, why he set out on it, and why he wanted to arrive at the conclusions that he did. So throughout part 6, he's essentially saying that science and philosophy have only gotten us so far, but he saw these holes, especially on these ideas of God and the body and the mind, and he wanted to come up with a method and put it to the test. And, this does go very nicely into his next project, the Meditations on First Philosophy. But just some closing remarks. There's actually a very big passage that I broke up into 3 parts here by Descartes. So the first, I thought it convenient for me to choose certain subjects which, without being highly controversial and without obliging me to reveal any more of my principles than I wished, would nonetheless show quite clearly what I can and what I cannot achieve in the sciences. So again, here, he wanted to focus on some topics that he felt like had been underserved in the sciences and philosophy, and he wanted to try to push them and reveal more about them and try to find some truth about them in his method, the project of his method. The second part of this passage, I cannot tell if I have succeeded in this, and I do not wish to anticipate anyone's judgments about my writings by speaking about them myself, but I shall be very glad if they are examined. So here is his call out to his readers. He's asking people to critique him, to object to him, to reply to him. He's looking for help, and he's putting a call out for all of us to apply this method and try to arrive at the same destination he did on his journey for the truth, on his search for truth. In the last part here, in order to provide more opportunity for this, I beg all who have any objections to take the trouble to send them to my publisher. And when he informs me about them, then I shall attempt to append my reply at the same time, so that readers can see both sides together and decide the truth all the more easily. So Descartes trying to be a great friend here, trying to be a great guy. He says, write to me, I'll reply to you, we'll go back and forth, and then everyone can see both sides of this argument at once. He thinks that's going to solve a lot of problems. But for now, I hope this helps.